Hi, I am Tony Russo from On Death Care, and this is The Rest, your weekly rundown of news from around funeral service. Been a busy week, and I'm not going to get to everything, but I'll get to everything that I can. Before I get to everything that I can, though, I do want to take a moment to thank my paid subscribers. They support this show and make it possible. And it has been an absolute blast to do. I cannot wait to do more of it. If you'd like to become a subscriber, paid or not, you can go to ondeathcare.com and hit the subscribe button, and I will send you practically everything I make if you subscribe at the $0 level. If you subscribe at the more than $0 level, I also have a weekly column that I send along, and I'm getting ready to add some more bonuses to the paywall soon. Yeah. But anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time, and let's get into it. One story that I put aside because I wasn't going to report on it is vaguely relevant, so I want to mention it. Tanya Covington Raddick is an author in Cross Plains, Tennessee, which is in Robertson County, and she has just written a book about Bobby Louis Wilkes, who was convicted and sentenced to prison for burial fraud back in 1988. And her book explores trust and the betrayal thereof and all of the different ways that this person was able to kind of navigate their community while also kind of cheating them. The reason I set it aside is because I had a bunch to talk about, but the reason I'm pulling it back out is because the first story is about Mundy Funeral Home in Jamestown, Tennessee, and the co-owner, Chadrick Mundy, who has been accused of widespread pre-need insurance fraud. Now, it says here that regulators discovered a pattern during their July audit, which uncovered missing files, unaccounted insurance payouts, and roughly $70,000 in fraudulent claims across a dozen policies. That is probably as true as we're going to be able to get for now. But I've been poking into this because they name-checked Homesteaders Life, which is this massive insurance company. And so I reached out to them and I said, how does this kind of thing happen? I did not know that not all states, actually no states, as far as I can tell, require a death certificate to pay out pre-need insurance. And I'll be doing a story about that because there's an interesting history. The short version is if they waited for the death certificate, then they may as well just have life insurance, right? The point of pre-need insurance is making sure that the funeral directors get paid in time, in a timely manner. And it's a newish process, according to some of the people that I've spoken with. But I also got a note from one of my readers that said, it is all about cash flow. And that really makes sense. The reason that this fraud can occur is because a funeral director has convinced themselves that they can catch up. If they just get 2 more steps ahead, they can catch up. This guy, I think everyone was lucky that they caught him at $70,000 because, as we've seen in other cases, that number can be a lot higher. What's interesting about Homesteaders being name-checked as one of the insurance policies is that further down in the story, it says that one of the things that triggered the audit is the fact that someone called one of the insurance companies. I do not know if it's Homesteaders, and they gave me a great reply that's going to be in the story, and I'm going to save it for that. But they said that they didn't want to talk about an open criminal case or an open case, and I do not blame them. But someone tried to move their insurance policy. And when they tried to move their insurance policy, the insurance company said, "That's interesting. We thought you were already dead and literally buried." So that's kind of what started all of the bells and whistles ringing. And the expert that I spoke with said that that is really the only way to catch these people. A lot of them. There are 2 or 3 ways. And again, I'm going to do a longer story. It'll be in that. But it's interesting because when you think about it on a global scale, like if somebody asked me to pay them $10,000 for a funeral, I would definitely want to know where that money comes from or is going to. But you have to remember that with a lot of times, these massive companies are getting so many claims in a day and paying them out immediately that it makes more sense for them in the end to take that little bit of extra risk that someone wasn't dead than it is to slow down the whole process, because this way that pre-need works now, this immediate payment, this very quick payment, is the difference between keeping a lot of funeral homes open and a lot of funeral homes not open. So it'll be interesting to see how things go on down the road. I wonder slash worry that there will be some sort of increased legislation or something like that that will make it harder to get these immediate payouts. And of course, with any luck, the associations involved will step in and try to prevent that from happening. So anyway, there's a link to the original story in the show notes. In other pre-need funding scam news, the Indiana Funeral and Cemetery Board voted unanimously earlier this month to revoke the license of Gary Greiner, a funeral director in Indiana, and also to revoke the license on his funeral business. So he can't be a funeral director in Indiana anymore. And he also can't own that particular building. Griner's accused of stealing more than $500,000 from pre-need funds. The investigation is ongoing, and no charges have been filed that I have been able to find, but there is an 18-count complaint. Now, that is not the interesting part for me. For me, the interesting part was a different section of the hearing where one of Mr. Griner's friends decided to try and buy his funeral home. The gentleman's name is Jeff Edmondson, and he eventually admitted under intense questioning that he was leasing the former Greiner funeral home facility from Gary Greiner. And so he had agreed to pay Mr. Greiner $3,500 a month in rent and also to provide him 50% of the net take of that funeral home each month, as long as the agreement was in place. The agreement was for 1 year, but it could be canceled within 3 months. And this made the funeral board really nervous, and it made one really, really angry. And I wish you could hear the tape. I'm not able to really cut it out of their YouTube page and onto mine. So I'm just going to read it to you because it's a fantastic quote from Frank Downing, who is on the Indiana Funeral and Cemetery Board. I have sat here on this board for 12 years, and every single time we have a situation like this, there's somebody there to cut a deal where the former owner is. Still, we don't want Greiner associated. He has given us all a black eye. He has hurt every funeral director's reputation in the state of Indiana and in the U.S. by doing this, stealing from little old ladies who trusted him. After a little while, he went after Edmondson and gave him a hard time for being involved in this. Edmondson and Greiner had been friends for a long time. It says here 35 years of professional and personal relationship. And it looked to the board like he was trying to keep this guy afloat who had already stolen $500,000 or more, allegedly, from the members of his community. And they did not want to be any part of endorsing it. So Edmondson won't be able to expand in Indiana, and I do not know what's going to happen to that funeral home. Edmondson said that it was no longer listed on the sheriff's sale list. It would be astounding if, Greiner, didn't have to sell the funeral home and was able to keep the funeral home while the people of Indiana paid for all of the money that went missing from his funeral home. Indiana, like Connecticut, not newly, Indiana's had it for a while. They have a fraud protection office where they can help families who had their pre-need money stolen, make sure that they can pay for the funerals. But anyway, there's a link to my reporting on this in the show notes. The Illinois Funeral Directors Association Board of Directors sent out a press release, an open letter, addressing some of the troubles that they've been having, specifically in Chicago. This particular one was about the National Bohemian Cemetery scandal, and we've reported on both of those before. What's interesting is it's funny. It says things very similar to what I was saying, which is before you go in and try to make some more regulations to prevent the last crime from being legal, I guess. It might make more sense to take a larger look at the framework, and there is a link to the statement there. I think I might be missing something because the Chicago stories seem way overblown. As I mentioned last week, there is new regulation that's not even enacted yet. I'm sorry, it goes into effect in January, and there are new regulations that are going to effect in January that make enforcement um, clearer and easier to accomplish. And I think that these two more recent, I mentioned this last time. I want to mention it again because the story among a lot of people is starting to be like, Chicago needs to get its act together. I want to say that I feel like their act is coming together, and I think that this is the result. If you decide that you're going to start enforcing the law, then you're going to start catching more people. That seems obvious to me. And so, again, if I'm missing something, please somebody tell me what it is. But I feel like these are examples of what was possible before the new regulations were written, and people are just keeping an eye out more. You're going to get more employees, who are saying, hey, I think something's weird's going on here because it's in the air now. I named it the Penrose effect, whatever, 3 or 4 years ago when the first body scandal and that huge body scandal broke in Colorado. But it is now that it's on people's minds, we are seeing so much more reporting on violations. The funeral boards are getting coverage for a change, which never happens. So it'll be interesting to see how things go on. If the funeral industry can, go without a major scandal for a while, maybe it'll become less interesting. But I think a lot of these reports and a lot of these calls for change are just people who are just showing up at the party and don't know what's been going on so far. But anyway, there's a link to it in the show notes. Another statement that I found on Facebook and would like to share with you is from A.S. Turner and Sons Funeral Home and Crematory based in Decatur, Georgia. It has acquired Ford Stewart Funeral Home in Jonesboro, also Georgia. And that company will now operate as Ford Funeral Home and Cremation Services, a division of A.S. Turner and Sons. The transition extends the reaching power of the Decatur firm while preserving the longstanding legacy of the Jonesboro business. I got a kick out of this mostly because I really am interested in how many independent funeral homes are now working to buy other independent funeral homes when it makes sense and it's possible. And one of the things that actually the owner of one of the owners of A.S. Turner and Sons said, his name is Cy Hume, and he said, "We are not corporate and we don't have that mentality. We see this merger as a definite win for both firms. Together, we can learn from one another and offer even more to the families who placed their trust in us." And so the other kind of piece of news that I wanted to mention is the fact that they added a division of A.S. Turner and Sons to the original name is something I think we would like to see more of, knowing there was a great Facebook post from another funeral director that I'll share in the show notes where he describes how if you're an independent funeral home, you can't just say you're independent because many corporately owned funeral homes look independent at first glance. And so making a big deal about being independent is an important part of it. And this, I think, is a great example of how to make your funeral home look independent and be independent and still make sure you get the credit for the ownership if the ownership isn't the person with their name on the building. The other thing is I wonder if A.S. Turner and Sons are going to be making more divisions that they can attach to this name. So um, what I wanted to ask the rest of you is make sure you let me know if you have something to share, if you've purchased a business, if you are selling a business, any M&A news. I am always happy to have and to share. You can send it to me, send all press releases to me at bytonyrusso@gmail.com. That is BYTONYRUSSO @gmail.com. And I will make sure that I address it in one way or another. I've never done this before, and I'm a little nervous, but kind of excited. This is something I would like to do more. So, first of all, I'd like to invite you, if you have a take on a breaking news or general news or even cultural thing, reach out to me. Shoot me an email at bytonyrusso@gmail.com. I would like to start including small editorial voices in this podcast, maybe 5 minutes less, to talk about something that is important. I had the privilege of speaking with Brad Kuknicki, who is the executive director of the Independent Funeral Group, about their new program. Now, a couple months ago, he and I spoke about it, and this was keep it under your hat until we can make an announcement. They've made an announcement. So they're essentially a support and buying group for funeral homes. It's an inexpensive club to join. It's worth it because you get special deals about everything. But this week, they announced after a year's worth of work that they are able to offer health insurance to funeral directors at no additional cost. So they're not taking a taste. They're not taking a commission. They're not taking anything. They worked out a deal that all of their members can have access to this health coverage. And there'll be more, as he says, there'll be more to talk about when it comes to what it's going to cost, like what insurance company is going to be the provider. There's more announcements to come, but I wanted to just give you his little take on it here.
Today we made the announcement that we unleashed our proprietary PPO healthcare plan, which has been approved in all 50 states. It was an enormous project that we've been working on for nearly 11 months. And, having to go through all the legal steps and trying to figure out how we could cross state lines. We had to go through a census, we had to go through bidders, and finally we were able to stick one that was willing to work with us in the independent funeral group to provide that to our membership. We have an application process that it's not intensive at all. We also have protective territories. Part of the deal of us working with the family-owned funeral home is to make sure they also have a competitive advantage. So we try to keep it that way. Now, our whole goal, our whole mission statement is to keep family-owned, family-owned.
And that'll do it for this time. The rest is an On Death Care production. It was written, edited, videoed, transmogrified, all the things by me, Tony Russo. Happy to do it, having an absolute blast doing this every week. I hope you're enjoying it. Thank you, as always, for your attention. I know that it's valuable, and I try to treat it as such. Once again, I would like to thank my paid subscribers for their support. It is moral support as well as financial support. It makes me do this, and it makes me feel even better about doing this. This is such a fascinating industry. There are so many great stories to tell, and your help in allowing me to tell them is invaluable to me. So if you have not subscribed to On Death Care yet, I would love it if you did. You can just go to ondeathcare.com and hit the subscribe button. After that, you've already supported me a bunch, but after that, you'll have a chance to support me more. You can select to support this newsletter at anywhere between $0 per month and more than $0 per month. Everything is appreciated. I am so grateful to be able to do this. And that'll do it for me this time, and I will catch you next time.